God, he scored so many goals.
Hello everyone and welcome to All the Pies. My name's Si. That's not Kev. This is a guest. This is no, don't worry, it's not me again on the other side.
But sexier.
That's
a good question, Si. Who's sexier, me or you, do you reckon?
I would say I'm sexier. You're more like handsome in like a mother-in-law way.
Yeah, I think I used to be more handsome. Like, not handsome, but more than you, you know. But now, like, that's gone. But you've still got, like, animal magnetism.
Yeah.
Like, a lass wouldn't want to romance you, but they know what they'd get, and they would like it.
Yeah. Even though I'm disabled, I still look like I could fucking chow a few, blokes in the beehive.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for having us.
Yeah, welcome. Everyone, this is Lee Kyle. He goes by the monarch of, is it England's best or Britain's best comedian?
Just England's. I don't know why, it just strikes me as funny to be England's best comedian, whereas Britain's best comedian just sounds a bit friggin' UKIP, doesn't it? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I've not seen all the ones in Wales, but I have been better than all the ones I've seen.
Yeah, all the Welsh ones. Well, that's good. You probably get people in the comments, no doubt, going, it's not England's funniest comic. That bloke off Italy who notices things. He's better. He's not.
I know, but what they don't understand is, like, comedy's subjective, isn't it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm exactly to my taste.
Yeah.
But so to me, I'm the best.
Yeah,
and
also... Go on.
Also, I am the best. I don't care what these fucking comment idiots say. I'll spark them all out.
I've tried how I would describe your style. It's like fucking your style is like Chubby Brown before he turned out fucking woke.
Is it? Is that what my style is? I think I'm like Rod Hull if he forgot the emu and was fucking missed it quite a bit.
Yeah. You're heavily influenced by Rod Hull. It's one of your.
I think he's the funniest man.
Yeah.
Just think, he's comedy distilled in one man grabbing the unwilling groins of people.
It was a comedian's life for Rod Hull, wasn't it?
And he even died funny, didn't he? You can't argue with that.
Yeah.
So I would say I'm England's best comedian, brackets, since Rod Hull died.
Since Rod Hull died off the roof, doing that aerial thing.
Watching football as it happens, wasn't he?
Tried to fix the aerial.
Because he wanted to catch the second half of Man United against Juventus, which I remember Roy Keane having a barnstorming performance.
Yeah. Well, speaking of football, this format is called My Favourite 11, in which a guest will come on and pick their favourite 11 players who played for their team at any period during that person's life. So you can't be like, my favourite's fucking Jackie Milburn and that other one with a statue. Like, no, you have to have like,
I considered Hughie Gallagher just because I read a book about him when I was a kid. And I like that he committed suicide on the rail tracks after he felt bad because he brayed his kid. I think that's...
It's poetic.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, it's not nice, but...
Yeah, but I saw him play, so he can't be in this. He can't be in this list. Even though he did a magnificent deed and a bad deed, he still can't be in the...
But what if I'd seen him on, like, cine film? If I'd seen everything about him,
would that still be a favourite? I don't know, maybe.
Some people are more into history than like that's the thing, isn't it?
Well, I don't
want to mess with your format too much. You've explained it. I've accepted it.
Well, I didn't even explain that it was a 4-4-2, and you just done that. Like one of the rules was it has to be a 4-4-2, but you don't have to have
some of them are slightly out of position, but they could absolutely play.
That's what I was going to say. You don't have to have like right wing, left wing, two in the middle. You can have like 4 right wingers if that's your favourite. Then so be it. We're not going to.
Mine isn't that, but I have justified it all to myself by I can remember them playing significantly in the positions they did play, even if it wasn't always their main position.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of yours are certainly of an era.
Yeah.
And we've got to start it off because I haven't got long. You're off to do other comedic endeavours this evening, aren't you?
I am. I'm going to do a gig and I don't want to brag about this. A sold out show in Wickham.
Fucking hell, mate! I wish I'd stuck at it.
Never. No, that's the thing, though. Once you really hit the big time like that, side, like your life's not your own.
Yeah.
I can't go anywhere now without people going, "Excuse me, you've dropped something."
You know how we used to joke about forgotten comics on the scene and everyone. Am I one of those names now? Like, do you remember?
No, because I think you've done enough things that the stories have passed on to others. So that's what you're more like a legendary fuck up. So that's something, isn't it? Yeah.
Am I like that Tony Mendoza? Have I got to that status yet? Or if I eventually do, you know what will I be?
Yeah, that thing, like Tony Mendoza had a tragic end, so he's fondly remembered by the 90s lot.
Yeah.
You're just like, it's more like, well, he's not done it yet.
Yeah. Disabled, like newly disabled, not counted.
I think the consensus is people think you deserve that.
Yeah.
It's karma,
and I can't argue with that one bit. So look at this Bobby Dazzler on the screen. For those at home, will appear on the screen now. Tell us your goalie, your favourite ever goalie.
Well, we'll see. The background to this this show looks a little bit like one of his famed tops. Now, this was one of the hardest positions because I do love a goalkeeper. Used to play in goal a bit, but it's hard not to go for former Banik or Strava stopper Pavel Srnicek, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, I will say out of this list, 6 of these 15 would be in my team.
Yeah,
so, and I have to say, Pavel is in my team.
I thought you might have went for John Burridge, but
John Burridge makes the bench only because when I eventually do tell the John Burridge story, it was going to be Shaka Hislop, but I thought I have to put the John Burridge thing in. I may as well tell the story because I might die before that, or I might cancel this YouTube channel because now not enough people watching it, and I get like bored. Really
like
easily.
When we did back to the 1990s, you go and then you cancelled. You took that off.
Cancelled that, just sacked it off. So John Burridge used to also run a discounted sportswear shop in Newcastle called the Subs Bench. And one time on a Saturday afternoon, funny enough, he hadn't made the team or the Subs Bench. We were in shoplifting shin pads because they were the easiest things that we could get that were the most expensive that weren't tagged, because I don't think he had the funding to tag lots of items, you know what I mean? So there was very few items that were tagged. So the shin pads were probably about 15 quid back then, and that was like a 3 deals. Like so anyway, I got caught with stuffing them into my jacket, because my jacket, as it is now, very much of the time then was too tight, so it wouldn't go in smoothly like all other lads. And he caught us stuffing it in, and he just came over, took it straight off us, cracked us around the head with it, and told us to get out. And I was a little fat thieving cunt.
Which is more apt in it, because you were a little fat thieving.
Yeah,
I used to like how you used to do.
But John Burridge also worked there. Yeah, I forgot him. I don't think I mentioned that. John Burridge also worked there. He didn't just own the shop; he also did shifts.
I like finding out about what old footballers do, old goalkeepers. Like anytime you bring up Mike Hooper, which I do more than is reasonable, people like to know that, like to tell you that he was a bouncer in Durham.
And sold drugs, apparently.
Yeah.
According to some people.
They all do, mate. So I had other options. Big fan of Tommy Wright. Soft spot for Mike Hooper, because he was a bit of a failure. And I've got to tell you, a lot of this list, I always had a soft spot for players people didn't really rate or like.
Yeah.
Basically, if someone was a target for the Boo Boys, I was well into them. I don't know why. Whereas
why you're an ideal candidate for the first show, because it is your favourite 11. It's quite clear you're not the best 11 Newcastle players you've ever seen. And that'll become apparent as we go on. Although there is
I've no time for Alan Shearer and all that stuff. I couldn't give a fuck about him.
Yeah, he would. I did really like Alan Shearer, but I didn't love him the way I loved Andy
he was dead good at football, but he didn't have flaws, so you couldn't really get to know him, you know?
Yeah.
Well, so Pavel Srnicek, I was invited to his book signing in Newcastle that he did, and I said, I'm not going to bother. And then he died 3 days later. That is a shame, isn't it?
Yeah, that is a shame.
Didn't go. And I remember people used to always talk about how he was a risky goalkeeper, and it was a mistake waiting to happen. But if you look at it, other than when he first joined and he was very new to English football, he didn't make lots of mistakes at all. He was quite modern.
Being a wicket keeper.
He was fucking great.
I do look back on those days with very much not like an a punditry's eye. It was just like goals. Mince.
Yeah,
I was very much a glory
for
supporter.
3 years. I'm incapable of any sort of judgment towards them. Like, I just think they're all great. I don't care who they are. I don't care if it's Malcolm Allen or Jason Drysdale or Richie Appleby. I just think they're all the best players in the world. I can't.
And there's some nice honourable mentions.
Sorry?
That there were some nice honourable mentions that didn't quite make the cut.
Definitely considered. I can't believe Nicky Papavassalou's not in here, I'll be honest. But we had a lot of good left-sided players. Well, I can't.
He was fucking rapid, Nicky, like, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's fucking great. And just the exoticism at the time of going, they've signed this player called Nikos Papavasiliou, and you're like, well, everything's brilliant now. The world's changed, you know. What an exciting time this is going to be. He'll be the best player I've ever seen, you know.
Yeah, that was when I started supporting at Newcastle. It was when it was almost certain we were going to get promoted to the Premier League. I was like, I like football now.
I'm going to get into this. Whereas I'd at least I have to say I'd been through some shit times of them being absolutely rubbish. But even when they were rubbish, I still secretly thought those players were the best players in the world. Like,
so was your first manager Aussie Dealers?
Aussie Dealers, Jim Smith before that, who actually sold what was quite a promising team. Like, it had all the better players had been sold, but he was a bit of a wheeler dealer, and I think he was taking money under the table, Jim Smith, you know, the old bald eagle. So he just replaced all of the team 2 or 3 times in about a month. That was sort of his style. But it meant that you'd get these obscure players, and I remember really liking Paul Sweeney and players like that. Players which you don't get now, where they would sign from Gateshead or Morton in Scotland and go straight to the Newcastle team. And I think that's brilliant.
Well, there's one or two, I'll be honest, who I did not know. And I was thinking, why? Yeah. I was thinking, Lee's not that much older than us. I think I always make it out like it's a big deal, but I think it's under 12 months between them. And I think, it can't be someone so obscure. And then I've looked and I've read, oh, right, I see why. I don't know.
But I was a very, very obsessive football fan, and not just of Newcastle. Like in the late 80s, early 90s, I was one of the. I would learn all of the teams that everyone.
I was about to say I discovered in Edinburgh 2013 when we did a show together and lived together for a month that you could pretty much name every starting 11 from the Premier League sticker book 92, 93, 93, 94.
Oh, I definitely could have, yeah. And before that, I could name, like, I had favourite players from teams in Scotland just based on reading their name in match. That was enough, you know, to go, well, I like him. I didn't know anything else about them. Now, it's weird. I don't watch football. I very much just don't. I'm not bothered anymore, which is strange because it did consume everything for a long time.
So,
and my friend Dodd.
Nostalgia.
Do I still
look back with nostalgia?
Not that much. I enjoy doing this though. I try not to have too much nostalgia anymore because it makes you sad, doesn't it?
It does. Look behind us. It's just like 80s and 90s cars and wearing 90s clothes, and I'm just like a miserable fuck. It does.
Yeah,
it's not good for you.
It's hard because I try to fight against the idea that things were better then because I just think I was better then, and it's not the same thing. But I did nostalgically remember my friend Dodge, who was arrested for writing PIAG on metro stations all over South Tyneside, which stood for Pavel Izajodi. He got caught writing all the names of all of the team on Bede Metro Station, but not just the team, like the backroom boys and the youth team and the coaches. And I remember I got Derek Fazak, but even more obscure, Chris McMenemy and everything, you know, Paul Ferris. That you wrote all their names on, you know, the whiteboards at the metro station at Bede, and did autographs for them all, and then decided to start writing all the first team names down the banisters. And he got arrested before he got to finish writing Darren Peacock. So it said Darren Peacock for years. And then,
wow.
So that's Pavel Srnicek.
That's a crack anecdote. I think because I'm conscious that you do have to get off at certain point, that for this next lot, let's just have a look. Yeah, let's do your back four.
Right. John Anderson, who was exactly the sort of player I like, solid, free transfer, there for 10 years, not always a first choice, could do a good job, right? Love that.
So when did Ando leave? I only know Ando from the radio.
But I think he retired in 1990.
Right.
He'd made the Ireland 88 squad, and then I think he had injuries and sort of retired around there. I did interview him And I tried to say this as a compliment to him, and it came out wrong because he was a good player. But what I said is like, oh, you were one of my favourite players when I was a kid. And I put it as all my mates, you know, they like the good players. But what I meant is I like the sort of solid utility men, you know. I wasn't bothered about Gaza or Chris Waddle, really. I like John Anderson.
Yeah, but it didn't come off as well meant as it was.
He was all right about it because, you know, I was in front of a crowd and we had a bit of, he insulted me back. It was lovely.
Yeah.
And then left back at the same time, Blake Lawes, Kenny Wharton. Best known for that time he sat on the ball against Luton, just to be a dick. And again, I sort of interviewed him and I told him how I thought that was great. It was like real like punk rock football, but he just seemed embarrassed by it. And I was like, no, that was the best bit.
Can we explain that for those who are like myself, a lot younger? So
it would have been 1988. I think I would have probably been at that game, but I don't remember specifically. I was 8 or 9, you know. But I remember Luton had beat Newcastle. And Luton were a team I really liked at the time, which we'll come on to later for another one of the players. They beat Newcastle convincingly, and I took the piss at Kenilworth Road. So here, I think Newcastle were 4 up and just knocking the ball along the back. Gazza did a few kick-ups, as did Gary Kelly in goal. And Kenny Wharton got it and just sort of sat on the ball while sort of Steve Foster got angry. And then just... It was like, I don't want to... I think people say iconic all the time. It's not an iconic image. It's an image that a few people remember. And he was dead embarrassed by. And I once heard him describe Kenny Wharton as someone with nothing between his ears but a touch of class. And I quite like that.
Yeah, that is nice. Well, I mean, looking at the photo, I think this was almost certainly a fan-made sticker. I don't think this was in the official Panini or the Merlin sticker book. And there's quite a few.
Imagine there was a Kenny Wharton sticker. And there must have been, because he was in the Newcastle team for a lot of years. And
well, this is the one. It'll be on the screen now. I don't know if you've got it in front of you now.
That doesn't look real, does it? But no, I would imagine if you got like the 1987 or 88 one, you could have got him. But
right,
in fact, you definitely could. But yeah, that doesn't strike me as legit.
And now I will say that the next two are also in my favourite 11. So please do the honours.
One of them mostly played centre-half after he left Newcastle for Sheffield Wednesday and Everton. But he did crucially play centre-back for Newcastle a lot. He could play anything famously. He played centre-half that glorious night against Barcelona. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's no fucking mug. And that's, at the time, Newcastle's youngest ever player, Steve Watson.
Yeah.
Who was the player I most closely followed. Because I think... Is he North Shields?
He is North Shields, mate. He is.
He's the player I most closely followed because he felt like we were the same age, even though obviously we weren't. Yeah. Like he was about 5 years older than me. But I think because he broke into the team so young, I could go like, what? Like, that's a kid playing.
Yeah. Well, Steve Watson, right? It's because so that season that we got promoted, I think it was my first year in high school, might have been first or second year in high school, 91.
He played once or twice, that's all.
Yeah, but it's everyone had the sticker book for the season we're promoted, and all of a sudden, every kid's uncle knew Steve Watson because obviously I went to school in North Shields.
Right, yeah.
Every kid's uncle knew Steve Watson, and I'm not ashamed to admit I told people that my uncle knew Steve Watson as well.
Of course you should. I was from Jarrah, so I just had to tell people like, "Oh yeah, my uncle knows Craig Russell." That's not as good.
Yeah.
Steve Watson, of course, was very famous very early because he could do a flip into a throw-in, which got made illegal after he did it. Even though I don't know, he did it on one of his first ever games against Middlesbrough, and there's footage on YouTube, and it sort of didn't work. Like it sort of went out for a goal kick, and then he never really did it again because he's obviously told not to by the manager because it's like, I know you're 16, but you're not playing in the park. You kind of fucking. But he did do it at I want to say. It wasn't Peter Beardsley's testimonial. It was one a bit later. Alan Shearer's testimonial, I think. He did do it there.
Like a nice little.
Oh yeah, it was like
nod of the cap over.
Yeah, it was beautiful, and yeah, bloody love Steve Watson. I'm a big fan of that entire youth team. People go on about there were so many great players from it. People go on about the Manchester United's class of '92, but Newcastle had sort of similar, and in a way more impressively because Man United were already dead good. Newcastle was shit. Yeah. Right? And then these players, Steve Watson, Steve Howie, Lee Clark, Robbie Elliott.
I'm surprised that they weren't in your team.
Well, there was a lot of them considered. A lot of the
Yeah.
players are left-sided. So, like, you had Beresford's and Robbie Elliott's were unlucky. But there's just a lot of them that I like, you know. And then other ones like Alan Thompson, of course, who left Newcastle. Lee Makel, who had a good career in Scotland. David Roach, who got swapped for Mike Jeffrey and then went to prison for selling loads of drugs and being a proper dangerous gangster. You know, stories.
Yeah.
To me, like, the fact that only Steve Watson out of those players, well, and Alan Thompson played once when he was nearly 30, played for England, is ridiculous. And it shows a weird bias. Like, so few of that Newcastle great team in the mid-90s got England caps. And it's just whereas I've always thought if you play for Tottenham for about 3 games, you get to play for England. And Steve Watson never did, and it's stupid.
Speaking of caps, the man finishing off your back lineup is certainly no stranger to caps. Would you like to say who completes the back?
It's a man who was already exciting when he signed because he just played in the World Cup in '94 and scored 2 goals from centre half. And he's responsible for one of the quotes that from you that I think of the most often.
Right.
It's Belgian brute Philippe Albert. If you watch Philippe Albert, the way he plays football and not think he's great, you don't like it as a game. Like,
yeah.
What do you want? He was a centre half, but sometimes he'd be up front for a laugh and do an overhead kick. And people talk about that chip against Peter Schmeichel, and it was great, but he was doing stuff like that all the time.
It was. People forget because of how good that team was when it comes to flair and everything. There's certain players get forgotten about.
Lots of them.
To me, he had it all. He had it all, Philippe.
You once, if I'm going to do the quote, it's that you once talked about. I forget the exact quote, but you described him. It would be an honour for the burly Belgian to kick your mum's back doors in, which I thought was lovely.
It would be. Because I can't stand it.
I'd be really too proud if my mum on her deathbed had went, "You'll never guess who banged me."
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I'd love that because now I've asked my mum, she's in a home because she's got dementia, so I wouldn't believe her. I'm like, nah, you're just saying that now because
you're going to claim that if you're going to claim it.
You're going to claim it at your stage of life, but nah, I would have been proud as punch, mate. I say I couldn't stand my stepdad, so Philippe Albert just like put a rattle in my mouth would have been an honour. So slight little break there due to technical error. We finished on a lovely what could have been a great anecdote about Philippe Albert. If you want to move on,
we should.
If you want to move up the park now, mate.
We're going into the midfield, the creative hub. I'll be honest, I cannot remember all 4, but I know 3. No, I've got them. It's fine. On the right wing, and now this wasn't the position I'd like to pick this lad, but you couldn't leave him out, which in some ways was responsible for the tragic loss of the league title in that ill-begotten season that we all know about when he was moved to accommodate. But you cannot not have Peter Beardsley, right? No. You can't. Peter Beardsley, innit? Like,
yeah.
I don't think he's my favourite player, Peter Beardsley, but I think he's the one who, I know he's the one whose name I say the most. I don't think there's a day in the last 20 years when I haven't said Peter Beardsley, not because I'm thinking about him. It's just that's what my mind is. And sometimes it's perfect and very funny. Sometimes it's like, why are you saying Peter Beardsley? Like, if I'm singing a song, it's amazing how often the words Peter Beardsley fit into the rhythm. And sometimes it's like, I get annoyed with myself going, why have I said Peter Beardsley again? Sometimes it makes people laugh dead loud because they forgot I say Peter Beardsley and it's just in the right place.
I remember you
also
once had
Ian Beale, but he's not as relevant.
Yeah, you once had a bit of material about Peter Beard's of Beans.
Fucking hell, yeah. No one ever enjoyed it.
I'm sure it smashed at the weekend Stag and Hindu gigs. I can almost remember it one night.
I used to really enjoy talking about it, but no one else ever. I'm not putting this forward as evidence of being England's guest comedian, but it's from a real conversation I had with my, to be honest, quite weird wife about if Peter Beardsley had a beard of bees, whether it would be better if he was called Peter Bumble Beardsley or Peter Beard of Bees. Which people don't want to know. The hyena were not interested, mate.
They weren't. I mean, they were going back and forth to the toilets, coming back over their noses, and they seemed to be always on a stag do from Stockport, and they just didn't seem that interested in there.
But it wasn't for them, you know.
No, it wasn't. Why should it be? You know what I mean?
Why should I don't want to say dumb myself down, but why should I make my thoughts amusing? Just for
exactly. No, I agree. I completely agree.
So that's what Peter Beardsley's mainly known for. He's beard quandary, right?
Yeah.
And then
if we move to the other side of the midfield, and then we'll do
other side. Very difficult one. This I would say 2 of the substitutes were considered, but ultimately Scott Sellars. There's something charming as fucking beautiful about Scott Sellars. This tiny little skinny man with just a wizard of a left foot, just looking a bit shy, and a bit like his top was too big for him. And but putting these, they're just perfect skill and putting these, like, I don't think him and Peter Beardsley made Andy Cole's career. That's ridiculous. But my God, he was lucky to have them.
Oh yeah.
In that season, where he scored 41 goals. Like, what a player Scott Sellars was. Like. And later on, he would have stayed at Newcastle, but people didn't have squads in the same way then. Like, as soon as Ginola was signed, it's like, well, we've got a left winger, we'll have to sell this one. Whereas now you'd go, obviously keep Scott Sellars.
Yeah.
Obviously keep him. He's really
We're in 4
good.
competitions, and it
but then it was like, we've got one. What if he gets injured? Well, he'd have to not.
Yeah. It was a beautiful time. And I remember Scott Sellars was actually the first ever autograph that I got at St James's Park, because I was there, that fat kid, really early, like before anyone else did all the autograph, and he was the first player that turned up. He was there before Keegan and Terry Mack even. It was Scott Sellars. He was my first. I got a brand new autograph, and it was a Newcastle United autograph book. It was just like a leather bound book with a Newcastle logo on the front, but they obviously charged like a tenner for it. Just blank paper. And he was the first. No, it was a Christmas present, but I certainly would have if the option had arose. First autograph in that book was Scott Sellars.
And I think the fact that he later went on to kill someone through drink driving should not be held against him.
No.
Because so did Malcolm Allen. What we're going to do? Rubbish all that team.
Yeah.
Just because they illegally caused deaths.
Bad thing, yeah.
But
that's
that free kick in at the 11th minute in the rain against Sunderland. That still happened.
It did happen.
I think you've got to separate the footballer from the drink driver. I've always said that.
I think so too. Moving into the centre of the park, can we leave the more obscure one? I think you'll know which one that I won't know out of the two.
Yeah, well, the first one we'll go with is someone who I would think of as a left or right winger anyway, but he could. I think these days he would play in the middle. With it's not as physical a game these days. He had better touch than was really appreciated at the time, I think, and I always felt a bit sorry for him. But I do think he's a very talented lad, and at least his last action for Newcastle United left him fondly remembered, and that is Kevin Brock. Right, love Kevin Brock.
Another one who apparently doesn't appear in Newcastle United sticker form. Couldn't find it on eBay. Couldn't find. Anyway,
I suppose he signed the last season they were in the top division halfway through, I think. So he wouldn't, and then he was played in the lower divisions. He played in like the second. So yeah, it makes sense. But Kevin Brock was an England '21 international. He was like a talented playmaker winger, but he would disappear from games. There's no doubt about it. He wasn't a hard man, but I remember he got substituted once with a headache, and I remember everyone hated him then. Everyone was like, he's soft as fuck. But looking back, it was probably a really severe concussion,
Yeah.
But then it was just like, headache, nah. But I remember thinking, I like him because I would do that.
Yeah.
And he's
also... He was one of those players who just missed my time frame. I think he was still there, but he wasn't getting used. And
He got the squad number the season after, which I believe, well, I know for a fact, was number 18. But he didn't play again.
Right.
He didn't play. That was his professional career done, I think. But he played in that season as one of a few right wingers that tried before they signed Robert Lee. So Steve Watson got a game, Franz Carr got a game, Kevin game. He sort of scored against Sunderland in the 2-1 win where Liam O'Brien scored. He was originally given the goal, but then it turned out it was a Gary Howar's own goal. And he's best known, I think, for that season for he came on as a sub when Tommy Wright came off injured and had to go in goal.
Right.
Despite being there was him and Brian against Birmingham, and he kept a clean sheet. So for all this stuff about him being brave, he was diving at strikers' feet and stuff. So I think people need to give him. So yeah, it was him and Kilcline on the bench.
Did you say Killer was there as well?
Yeah, and apparently Kevin Keegan turned to Brian Kilcline and went, "What you like in goal, Brian?" And he went, "Big." He went, right, Kevin, you're in goal. So this right winger had to go in goal for, I think it might have been his last ever appearance, last or maybe one more for Newcastle United.
Wow.
And I mentioned him in an Edinburgh show once, an Edinburgh Festival show, for some reason. I can't remember why. But I remember talking about Kevin Brock, and a bloke went, Kevin Brock? I went, yeah. He went, I was in Oxford's youth team with him. And it turns out, I was like, what was he like? What was he like? I was like, he was leagues ahead of the rest of us. And this was when Oxford won the top division, you know. He said, yeah, he was just like, like his touch and everything. It wasn't appreciated then because he wasn't kicking anybody, but they said he was great. And he's also partly responsible with two other players for the first joke I ever had that made me go, fucking hell, that's an amazing joke. And I'll tell you it. And
well, we're gonna have to hear this now.
Possibly. Oh, it's not even that it's that funny. I just thought that's so clever. And it's only basically the target audience for this is you. That's it, right? It's which 5 Newcastle United players have advertised Brute? It's good, right? That's a question. Because 2 of them legit. And the answer was Paul Gascoigne, Kevin Keegan, Kelly Lee Brock. And I was just thinking, that's a fucking incredible that. Like Kelly, you know Kelly LeBrock?
Yeah, Kelly LeBrock, yeah.
Yeah, Kelly Lee Brock. And as a 12-year-old, I just thought, well, that's comedy fucking, that can never be topped. You know, like you, when you heard the Redneck song Cotton Eye Joe, and you were like, well, that's the best song anyone will ever make.
They may as well stop making music now. Yeah.
That's how I felt about jokes. I went, that's perfect.
I generally said that in the music teacher at school, that what's the point in even making any more songs now? I
but you hadn't heard Old Poppin' and Oak yet, though, had you? So.
No, I hadn't. You're right. Yeah.
So the other one, shall I get into?
We'll get into the other one because of the name. So I looked at the names, and obviously I knew the vast majority. I didn't know them like you knew them, but I'd heard of them, the older ones before my Glory supporting days. And this next guy, I was Googling his name, followed by Newcastle United sticker, because I wanted it all to be like in a 80s, 90s sticker book style. And Google kept correcting me and saying, do you mean Darren Peacock Newcastle United sticker? And I kept putting it in. I said, no. And I was like, right, is Lee done this right? Is this a real person? You'd spelled it wrong, but not a great deal wrong. Not enough that it would automatically just go, no, you meant Darren Peacock. You meant fucking Darren Peacock.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, why the hell do I not know this guy? And I checked, did he play for you? Oh, he played 3 times in 1992.
Yeah, but there's context around this, fella. You see, he was Kevin Keegan's first signing.
Right.
Darren McDonough is his name. £90,000 from Luton Town. Yeah, there's big Darren. Now, what you've got to understand is I was such a big fan of football at the time that I really liked teams such as the Oldham team of the time, which was a really good team, the best they've ever had, and the Luton team of the late 80s, for whom Darren McDonough was a key player, right? In that, he was often the 11th player in their team or their substitute. You know, he could fit in a lot of roles and stuff. But I always liked him for some reason. Perhaps I just liked his name. I would do that. So I remember when Keegan signed him, me thinking, this is it. I had my doubts. Who knows if Keegan was going to be a success? But I was like, this bloke, he knows a player. You know what I mean? He fucking knows a player. And I later went on to find out that actually it was the signing of Darren McDonough that made him sort of get new scouts in, when he went, he was an all right player for what they thought we were looking for, but we're going to need better players than that to progress. But
can you remember? I'm sure you can, but can you remember the fee paid for him? I don't know. I'm just
£90,000.
Was it?
He signed roughly at the same time as Peter Garland signed from Charlton, which I think was 35,000. But I'm not as sure on that one. So Darren McDonough was a defender or a midfielder, and he was a top division player. He played, but maybe his time had passed, you know.
Yeah.
And even though Newcastle were a lower league than Luton at the time, I also see there's different pressures. It's a different thing, you know, different size stadium and all that. But also, he broke his leg not long after he signed, and I remember someone saying he sold E. I don't know how true that is.
I think he missed the entire promotion that we've had drug dealing accusations towards.
The northeast of England's rotten in it, basically.
Amazing.
Broke his leg, right? Didn't appear for the entire promotion season. And the last I saw of him was on, you know, that brilliant open-top bus parade where Lee Clark put on a curly wig and went, "Hey, I've got me Terry Mac wig on." You know, that beautiful parade.
I do.
I remember seeing Darren McDonough with these crutches on the back of that bus, and I remember thinking, "Fuck me, Premier League's coming up. We're gonna need McDonough." But he never played again. But he was, to me, the first sign that Keegan was going to be a success. You know, buying this player who I reckoned was great based on liking his name and going, this is it. And I remember reading that I think he built his own house in later life, Darren McDonough.
Right.
That's something, isn't it? Those were always my favourite players. I always like fringe players. Always like them.
I remember being at that parade, even though I hadn't been to a single game in my life when I was there. You know what I mean? As if I'd supported them all the way through.
Yeah.
I'd never been to one single game at that point in my life. But yeah, if I remember correctly, I was looking at it late last night, having to find this fella. Did he only play for 3 professional teams?
Oh, I don't know that. I remember him at Luton. I know he played for someone before Luton. And
I think that was. I'm sure there's only three teams.
Yeah, maybe he was at Luton a while. I know that, and he got a leg break at Newcastle, like I say, which I think finished him. I don't think he ever played again. So I don't know how old he was. It's hard to tell, isn't it? Because when you're a kid, he was the age of a bloke. Like he might have been 25, he might have been 35. I don't really know.
I mean, even now, looking back at that era, I'm 43, and I think I look a good 10 years younger than Kevin Brock, who's probably about 20 there.
You know, he was a young man there. He was a young athlete.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Right, mate, do you want to finish off your starting 11?
It's tricky, the centre forwards, isn't it?
Powerhouses.
It's tricky, centre forwards, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's tricky because
see, I would have had Beardsley in mind, but you've now added that caveat where I can slip Beardsley in to midfield if I ever do. I
will say one of these lads is my favourite ever player. The other one, it was closer. It could have been him or somebody else who's on the bench, but I couldn't. Just the sheer rush of the amount of goals he scored at the right age for me was just so exciting. So one of them is Andy Cole, right? And I know people go, fucking look at him, man. What he would do is he would get the ball, and then he'd score a goal. It's fucking brilliant, right? And I know people go, he became a better player when he was at Man United. Blah, blah, blah. No, he didn't. 41 goals in a season, you daft cunts.
Yeah.
Like the sheer amount of joy that man brought me for a couple of years. Like I couldn't even get annoyed at him for leaving for Man United. It was a heartbreaking day when it happened.
The only time I've ever cried over football, like genuine tears, was when Andy Cole was the day he was sold, and I had the poster on his wall, right? And I was standing on my bed listening to the Sky Sports, like the end of a match where it had him and Scott Sellers running down, and it had the song "Love Lifts Us Up Where We Belong." And I kept replaying that bit, looking at the thing of Andy Cole, and I was in tears, like floods of tears. And not long after, I decided I should probably stop being an actor and question other things. But first and only time football's ever brought me to actual tears.
Yeah, I think I had 2, that and when Kevin Keegan left, and I think that's when I went, I can't keep putting too much of my happiness in like these men who I can't change what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, I've seen it again. I've seen it with my son, who obviously is much like you. He started supporting during the rough days. He started at 8 years old, about when you did. I waited until the good times were almost guaranteed to be. So my youngin's been through the Ashley days, and so his favourite player is Alan St. Maximin, and his sister got him a framed picture for Christmas, signed off Alan St. Maximin. And then I remember I had Sky Sports News on, and it was literally a few days later. The picture was still downstairs next to the wrap and hadn't been taken up and put up yet. And Sky Sports News, I had on in the background, it was like, breaking news, Alan St. Maximin looks set to leave Newcastle. And I just saw him well enough. I thought, come here. I know what it's horrible.
Like. It's horrible. Because one day that fucker will be playing for Spurs, running at the Newcastle goal,
Yeah.
It's I think that key thing of, at least Andy Cole got eventually within 6 months Les Ferdinand signed, so it was fine. But Kevin Keegan, that moment they should have just shot me in the face. That was done. It's done, wasn't it?
Well, I don't think I ever forgive Keegan for that.
And I don't blame him either, because I can never get angry at Kevin Keegan.
Yeah, I know. I just Shearer was great, because I will show in a future video. I was right there at the front the day he signed. I was on the back of the newspapers, little fat charver like that. So it was buzzing, but I don't think the joy of signing Shearer outweighed the pain of selling Cole.
Nah.
I don't think it quite matched it for me. Maybe because it was a couple of years in it, a year in it.
And it almost felt like the signing of Shearer more felt like, well, this is just the next step to inevitably win the league next season. It was like, oh, that's going to happen now then, even though it didn't. Whereas Andy Cole, it was like, oh, all these things that have happened, this is all going to fuck off now.
That's how that's completely how it felt.
No disrespect to Paul Kitson, but he's not going to step up. It's not going to fucking happen. He's not good enough.
And I think
actually, it wasn't that bad.
Everybody forgets we didn't just get 6 million in cash. The people say, "Oh, we got 7 million for Andy Cole." No, we got 6 million in cash, and we got motherfucking Keith Gillespie.
Yeah, but at the time, I remember going, "Well, he could fuck off."
Yeah, exactly. But looking back, fuck me.
Yeah, you watch what he did, but fucking let people forget Barcelona that day. It was people talk about Asprilla. It wasn't even about him. Watch, like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But on that night, I was just like, fuck him, fuck everybody. He's Gillespie shit. Yeah. And then within a day, I was like, I reckon he's probably better than George Best. I reckon he's the new George Best. You know?
Yeah, it's surprising how quick I became a fan of Keith Gillespie. Like, it was
pathetically quick. But he's better, actually. I'm glad.
Yeah, so he's almost certainly on my bench. Gillespie almost certainly. Right, mate. Yeah. We'll finish off. Again, this is. I think this. If I'm right in saying this player was replaced by Andy Cole to an extent.
They played together at the end of the promotion season. Scored a hat-trick in his last match for Newcastle. He was more replaced by Beardsley, really. And now they'd keep him. They'd go, because what actually happened is they replaced him with Peter Beardsley. Beardsley got elbowed off. Neil Ruddock was out for months, and they didn't have another centre forward, so they had to buy Malcolm Allen as a short-term fix. Who did great, actually. Yeah. Whereas now you go, why don't we have 3 centre forwards? you know, rather than hope Alex Matthews good enough for the bench who we've just bought from Morton.
Do you want to name this guy?
David Kelly. It's my favourite player ever, and it's not even close. Everything like.
Again, no sticker, no official sticker, unfortunately.
No, again, he never played in the top division for Newcastle. So. But tried really hard. That means a lot, right? It does. Like, willingly ran, had the hair of a fucking schoolboy who didn't know what to do with his hair, so he looked like just an enthusiastic amateur, which I always quite like. Was one of 8 centre forwards in the Ireland World Cup squad, of 7 or 8 centre forwards, which I think is mental in 1990 when you can only have like 20 players. I think they took 7 centre forwards. All of whom, none of them could even play wide, which I think is fascinating. Just 7. Yeah. Like, I remember interviewing Bernie Slavin, and he was like, I was there, and I thought, I'm 7th choice centre forward. And I'm Scottish. I hope they get knocked out soon so I can go home. But whereas David Kelly, absolutely my favourite, scored the goal that kept Newcastle up in that division, without whom a lot of people think they would have gone bust. And the goal that got them promoted.
Yeah.
Like,
David Kelly was a lot of people in my year's favourite player. Like I say, I wasn't invested really until I knew we were going up. So I used to tell people he was my favourite. But
well, you luckily chose right.
Yeah, I can't claim any ownership of David Kelly like with that fondness, because I was basically a fraud back then in that promotion season.
Well, he's sort of like so. There's this massive long history of Newcastle number 9s, and he's not ability-wise in the top 10, right? He's probably not in the top 20, but in terms of significance, he's been forgotten, and he really shouldn't have been. Like, arguably his goal might have saved Newcastle United, to be honest. And
so was his name taken off him for Cole?
No, Andy Cole wore 8 at first until the next season. Yeah, he wore 8 for the promotion season. And David Kelly was so beloved in his day that when he signed for Sunderland, it didn't work out for him at Sunderland, but the Sunderland were a dreadful team when they were getting relegated. He came on as a substitute for Sunderland at Newcastle and got applauded on.
Yeah.
I mean, fucking hell.
Yeah, that doesn't happen to just any old soul. I don't even think
Yeah.
did Lee Clark even get that reception? Not that I can remember.
Nah, Lee Clark wouldn't have. Nah, it was a different. What you've got to remember as well is there's caveats in that Newcastle were clearly better than Sunderland at that point. You know, like it wasn't a close thing. Whereas when Lee Clark was playing for Sunderland, Sunderland were actually all right. It was when they had the Kevin Phillips Niall Quinn team, so it's a slightly different vibe in it. And I think people had also understood that David Kelly had went at the end of his career, whereas Lee Clark sort of wasn't at the end of his career. It's different in it. It's just
No, it is. It is.
But if I had to choose a favourite player, it would be David Kelly.
Except I think that's apart from a couple of names who I have, one name who I have no idea about. I think that's an absolutely solid 11.
Oh, and they're not all that good players, which I think is what you asked for favourite, not best.
Oh yeah, I don't just mean. I mean like in a way that like characters of just great, not all uber talented, but just great characters, I suppose. Which you don't.
And the reasons I like them don't always make sense. Like the truth is, I like Darren McDonough because he played for Luton, and I quite liked him, and I liked his name. But I did like him. That is just true. You know?
Well, I'm looking at your bench now. Got 4 on the bench. There's 2 extraordinary picks who I think would probably both make it in my, if not 11, definitely bench also. And there's 2 who, again, clueless over.
Okay,
I'll start with the 2 that we know. Okay,
Les Ferdinand. It was so close with him and Andy Cole. I just remember the day he signed, it was like everything's going to be. I would replace someone better. It was just this fucking chiseled god of a man who was just going to leap 10 foot in the air and just header it in and just be. And it just felt. I think if I had to have sex with one of them, it would be Les Ferdinand.
Les Ferdinand, good choice.
The other one actually might be sexier is David Ginola, who it feels insane leaving him out, but I really had to put Scott Sellers in. But especially the first half of the season of Ginola playing for Newcastle was just, I've not seen talent like that. And I still really have, you know, of like all these, I know players are more effective now, but in terms of just being beautiful to watch, and then again, it shows the bias as well that he went to Tottenham, played pretty well, played about the same. They finished mid-table and he won Player of the Year because, he's in London now.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, speaking of which, I don't know if you've got the photo in front of you or not. I'm going to put it up on the big screen for everyone to see. I'll quickly hold it up for you to have a little look at now. That was the day.
Oh, there you go.
Playing. You can see.
He must have been looking at you and go, what the fuck are people like around here?
I mean, just look at the. I mean, yeah. For those, look at all the faces. Like,
yeah, everyone looks unhealthy as fuck.
From Sweet Paris to fucking that. Do you know what I
mean? No wonder he wanted to go to Barcelona. The poor cunt. I remember John Beresford saying once that they were on the coach and Ginola was in a right mood, you know, just ranting about how everyone was unhealthy and they weren't proper athletes. You know, because they're having chips after the match.
Yeah.
It's like John Beresford was like, David, you having a tab? And he's just sat there smoking a tab.
I was about to say, ironically, he was the player out of all of them who had the earliest to have a heart attack as well.
Yeah, he did, because of his good living, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So the other 2, I'll have to quickly get onto this because I do have to go on foot, which is a shame because I might make them another 11 and do this another time.
Oh, we'll definitely have you back, mate. I've got another equally ludicrous criteria for a team, so we'll definitely have you back. Oh, 100%.
I've enjoyed this. So the other Mark Stimson, who was part of the promotion squad, people hated Mark Stimson, fucking hated him. He was a left back, talented, might make mistakes. I remember being furious when they signed John Beresford, and there's no point. We've got Stimson, he's brilliant. I think I liked him because he had bright white hair.
Yeah.
And at that time, I remember
that is albino white. The camera.
Yeah. But there was always a player in the Newcastle squad. I remember at that time, you know, when you'd get the squad photo in a poster form from Shoot. There'd always be one in the Newcastle squad with bright white hair, and I liked that. I remember there was Darren Bradshaw, I think John Cornwell, then Stimson, then Alan Armstrong. It felt like a proud tradition, you know. But I liked Stimson.
The Stimson picture that I was going to use was either going to be the only thing I could find him in a Newcastle was a match poster. Funnily enough, it was a scan. It had the staples in the middle and whatnot. But I wanted to stick a book format. Extra point if you can name what team that was.
Portsmouth.
All right, it was.
He signed for them from Newcastle, yeah, in that summer. But he did play a couple of times in the promotion season. He was a left back primarily, but halfway through that season, it became obvious that Sheedy's legs had gone. He'd been a great player, Kevin Sheedy, but that was the weakling in the team. He was old and he wasn't what he was, you know. And it was just before they signed Scott Sellers. They played Alan Thompson one game on the left wing, and then Stimson on the left wing. And I remember being so proud of him because I forget the game. I think they won 4-0 or something. And Stimson was excellent. And I remember in the mag, they referred to him as the rejuvenated Stimson. And I remember thinking, I'm just dead chuffed. And he never played again. But it absolutely seemed like he might have a part to play. And I was just like, look at him. Look at Kevin Keegan and Mark Stimson. You know, I'm just, and that was the good thing about liking these fringe players. They didn't play, like, he did play a lot for Newcastle before that. But by that time, he was done. But then I like when they have a little thing at the end where people go, actually, he was all right.
See, that's why I'm surprised that this season hasn't got you back for that rejuvenation of and that refreshingness that's been injected into quite clearly. Some of them were a parcel of shite, you know, and people are playing out.
I don't know. It's gone now. The various Saudi things I'll not bore you with because I know I won't agree. But also, I think even if not, it wouldn't grab us in the same way it did then. I think maybe the fact that technically I'm supposed to be working more Saturdays, I guess. It's just over here. It's just sort of, I just don't. And in some ways it is sad. In some ways it is. Like, I would rather, I think, feel more of a part of it, but I guess not. So the other one is, I have to accept, did play for Newcastle in my lifetime, Alan Shoulder. But I didn't see him play. I have seen clips of him play. He's someone I've got to know a bit through doing gigs at football clubs, and also me and Gav Webster do a show where we interview footballers. And basically, if we couldn't get one, we'd get Alan Shoulder on. And he's someone who he's so fucking funny. Like, I've done gigs where I've had to go on after him, and you go, no, put me on before him, especially at a football do. I don't know how much he knows he's funny, but he's fucking fascinating. If you could get him on for one of these, it would be great. Basically, he ran Gav. Sometimes he thinks of facts from his career that rings Gav as if it's a quiz. But it's always really shit. Go, Gav, so I've just got a quiz question for you. Which Newcastle player, and it's always him, scored the most penalties ever for Newcastle until Shola Amiobi? Like, is it you, Alan? You know?
And I bet you the Gav was a dream. You can only know that name through Gav. Through here,
Gav's so excited. Yeah. It's like a childhood hero for him. Whereas for me, it's just some daft cunt, you know, who was dragged from a pit. He was a pitman who was doing well for Blythe, and then just got into the first division straight away and had a good career, you know. But he's fascinating. He's got stories about his brother who ended up killing himself. I think his brother, who was a football hooligan, a big punk. He was a punk footballer, and he was like, I played for Newcastle. He fought for them. You know, it's just. And I'll end it with a story he told me.
I like that.
It's sort of nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a story. I'll end it with a story he told me while we were doing a talking thing in Carlisle. Where in Newcastle, he's one of many decent centre forwards. In Carlisle, he's one of their greatest ever players. He played for them when they were nearly getting re-promoted to the top division and stuff, right? And he was furious, by the way, that Newcastle sold him at Carlisle because they bought Kevin Keegan because he thinks he was better than Keegan, right? He has no doubt about his abilities, Alan, right? And you kind of go, if that's true, why did they sell you at Carlisle? But he was sat there before the thing in a all-you-can-eat Chinese buffet, me, Gav Webster, Alan Shoulder, and I'm thinking, this is surreal anyway. This is we had to share a room in some digs last night where Gav was hammered and fell asleep, and his last words were, Les Ferdinand was good in his day, and then fell asleep right in there.
That's fucking brilliant.
So we're in this restaurant, and Alan Shoulder's trying to persuade her that he was a better player than Maradona. And he's joking, but he's half joking, you know?
Yeah.
And Gav was like, well, I think you were good, Alan, but I just think Maradona was a bit better than you, you know? And he went, all right. Was he? Right. Well, he said, put it this way. Would Maradona have scored 21 goals for Carlisle in one season from the left wing? And he went, he probably would, Alan, easily, you know. Then he thought for a while, he went, fair enough. But would he track back?
But I think we'll have to get him on, definitely.
I think if he could figure out the internet, he would do it.
Yeah. Brilliant, mate. Well, that brings me on nicely. We'll have to get you back, mate. I've really enjoyed this. I've had some technical errors, which I hope I'm going to be able to sort in the edit. I'm sure I will. But where can people find you, Lee, if they want to catch up with your shenanigans? I hear you've got a brand new hour special out.
Yeah, it's actually 80 minutes because I booked the fucking time. I'll do as long as I want. I've got a show on YouTube called search Lee Kyle Disco Twix. It's
Put a link in the description. Simon. Is it proper woke?
But aggressively so. It's like, so. I think of it as left-wing comedy done in the style of right-wing comedy. You know, like calling people cunts. So it's not oh, I'm not like, oh God, let's all be nice to each other. It's more like, let's not be nice to these cunts.
Yeah. So, excellent. I haven't watched that myself. I will put the link in the description for anyone who wants to check that out. And you are Lee Kyle on pretty much all socials. And you also have a social stand-up comedy, the only one known in the country, called Felt Like.
The world's only comedy cooperative, ran by all comics in the Northeast, apart from a couple of them who are pricks. I'll leave you to guess, Simon.
Yeah.
Don't say.
I know.
Yeah, correct. If people fancy, look up Felton Out. We do loads of stuff. We're just... just loads of stuff. If you want to support, we're patreon.com/feltonout. We do loads of work for charity in the community and put gigs on and that. There you go.
And local comedy, which you can do even if you don't like go out the house. There's loads of online shit they've got as well, isn't there?
Yeah, got loads of shit. Got loads of loads of fucking shit. There you go. I've got loads of shit. But now I've got to go and do one of them gigs. And
well, thank you very much.
At the start of this interview, Elaine Robertson was meant to be picking us up to take some equipment to a gig to do, but then Kat's just got rushed to hospital, so I've got to be picked up in 5 minutes. I'm going to check your messenger now, see if anyone's got to us for a lift.
Well, good luck with that, mate. I'm afraid I can't help you out, but what I can help is to tell all the folks to like, comment, subscribe, and share this. Your support to all the pies is greatly recommended. Thanks once again, Lee, and we'll catch you again very soon, no doubt. Cheers, mate.
Thank you, mate. It's nice to talk to you.